Hello, my name is Mihaela Gruia and I'm the founder and director of Research Retold. This is the second video in our interactive series on communicating research. In the last video, I showed you 5 reasons why it's important to communicate your research beyond academia. In that video, I also introduced Research Retold as a leading specialist research communication company based across the pond in the UK. We help researchers communicate their findings in accessible and visual ways to non-academic audiences. The infographics, policy briefs, visual summaries, and materials that we produce for our researchers are most effective when they are embedded in a communications plan with clear goals and objectives. In this video, we will go over the 5 building blocks of a communications plan, and between now and the next live Zoom session, I will invite you to apply these to your own research. A communications plan is a document that helps you answer these 5 questions. What are you trying to achieve? Who are you targeting with your communications? What message are you aiming to get across? When will you reach your audience? And finally, how are you going to distribute that message? If you need to be strategic about how you communicate your message to the world, then having a detailed document that helps you answer those questions from before will be very useful to you, because it helps to align you and your team. It helps to clarify what you're trying to achieve. It gives you time to plan for resources. And finally, it maximizes the impact of your hard work. The first step is to set the goals and objectives of your research communication plan. And here, the more specific and measurable your objectives are, then the more focused and efficient your communications can be. Here are some examples of objectives of being as specific as possible. Remember that developing objectives is an iterative process. So whilst in the beginning of your research journey, you might be focused on raising awareness about your study, towards the latter parts of your research, once you have announced your findings, you might be focused on building influence. Also, goals should not just focus on outputs, meaning how many events you organized, for example, but also on outcomes, meaning any actions that people took as a result of attending those events. And finally, aim for 3 objectives or less. The second step is to define your target audience, and here we might be dealing with more than one audience, so try to focus on the 3 most important. If you understand your most important audiences, then you can tailor your communications and messages to their interests and needs. To figure out who your most important audiences are, ask yourself, who could we engage with to achieve our communications objectives and why? If possible, this brainstorming can be done as a group, so you can bring different ideas and perspectives to it. And finally, when defining your audience, again, you want to be as specific as possible, just like with your objectives. For example, instead of being vague and saying policymakers, you want to think about what department they're from, what committee they might be part of. Could you get their name and contact details? So really drilling down to exactly who you're trying to target. Once you've defined your audience, it's important to do some research on them, and this information will help you tailor your messages to them. For each audience, ask yourself, what is their current view or position on this topic? What changes would I want to see happen as a result of them understanding my research? And finally, what is your hook? Meaning, what message from your research will most likely capture their attention? Is it an economic argument? Is it a social justice argument? Or perhaps they're most compelled by environmental reasons? Whatever it is, you need to extract that message from your research and meet them halfway, where they will respond to what you have to say. You might be asking yourself, well, how can I find this out? Well, you can start by looking at their online profiles. You can look at their social media profiles, or perhaps their articles that they share. Does that give you an insight into what their position is? Another way is they're part of an organization, and that organization would have some sort of mission statement or value statement, and that could give you a glimpse into where they are coming from and how you can create those messages that will make them respond. At this stage, you want to get as much information on your audience as possible, so you can be as targeted and focused with your communications as possible. Once you figure out what messages you want to send those individuals, then you need to start thinking about when is the best time to engage them, and then reverse engineer your steps from your objectives. Now, on the screen now, I will show you some examples of timelines and activities. Again, the aim here is to work backwards from your objectives. Are there any activities or key dates that you need to keep in mind, and can we work backwards from that date? What activities need to happen between now and then? Creating a timeline of activities will help you see what messages are going to be told to whom and when. And this will also help you organize your resources and give you plenty of time for sign-offs and lead-in activities. And finally, you want to keep an eye on this timeline, as you will need to adjust it as necessary. And finally, let's talk about channels and formats of communication. Thinking about where your audience spends most of their time and also your messages, you need to identify a channel of communication that makes most sense for your audience. We can make a distinction here between online and offline, although everything is online these days, but here are some avenues for you to consider. When it comes to formats, there are plenty of formats that you can choose to communicate your research nowadays, and perhaps a useful distinction here could be made between static and dynamic. And again, I'll pop on the screen here a few examples for you to consider. Let's go over the formats of communication that we create for our researchers, which you can find in our guide to communicating research beyond academia. The image we're going to pop on the screen right now can be found on page 10 of our guide and compares these formats in terms of the audience they are most suitable for, the formality, the time it takes to produce, the visual impact, and storytelling. So pause the video and take a look. In conclusion, a straightforward communication plan covers your goals, your audience, your messages, your timing, and finally your channels and formats of communication. So how do these 5 building blocks apply to your own research? On this page under the video, you will find a downloadable template that you can use to fill in and to start thinking about your own communications plan. In our next and final live Zoom session on the 20th of November, we will talk more about this content as well as resources that you need, risks to think about, and also how to evaluate the success of your communications plan. If you have any questions in the meantime, please email me at mihaela@researchretold.com. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.